Alright, a lot of people have covered this already, but what the hell. I played it not too long ago, and I'm going to give it another shot because I remember having a fun time with it. It's called China. It's a Euro game, obviously. And, well, one thing I can say is it works well in 2, even though it doesn't advertise it works well in 2. A lot of Euro games do that. We'll hit the rules in a moment. Just some background on where I am. I'm still working on the Lace Wars and Sea Lords stuff, and I'm going to have to take another break to set that up and start playing it solo before I play it solo, just to get a feel for it. But right now I'm still not through Sea Lords' rules, so I figured I'd buzz in with another one of these suckers. And nobody really cares much about my Euro coverage anyway, so just allows me to do what I kind of like to do without it costing too much. I don't really want to do something else that's even moderately big. I was finding myself getting sucked in and never getting around to actually setting up and doing it. Of course, I'm doing the same here, but if I go without any game, I'll play a video game again. Alright, so let's go to China. What is this? This is an interesting game, actually. So, for setting up the game, you get a pile of these pieces, and you get these little houses. Yeah, it's like Monopoly and hotels. Emissaries. Each player also, this is an optional rule, gets one of these fortifications. I'm going to try playing with it. I didn't do it in the 2-player game. The board is reversible. There's a slightly different board for 3 or 4 players than for 4 or 5 players. And we used the 3 or 4 player board for 2 players. It worked fine. No modifications to the rules at all, except I think we removed more cards from the deck than the 3-player game. In the 3-player game, you remove a certain amount of cards. Hey, we removed a few more here. The goal of this game is to score some points. And how do you score points? Well, that's a little tricky, actually. You score them by placing your houses and your emissaries where they're going to create value for you. But it's not intuitively obvious where you're going to get your value and what it's worth. So let's take a look at what we're going to be doing. We're going to have this deck of region cards, and these guys are basically a color, and they match regions on the map. In general, that's going to be 2 regions. The purple region is only a singular region, so any purple cards will only be for 1 region. You also have these guys, which are just score bonuses. They're to indicate you went over that 50-point space on the score. Everybody's going to get a handful of these. How many? What, 3 each? Yeah. And then the rest is going to be made into a deck. And the top 4 cards from that deck are going to be revealed, and they're kind of a pool to select from. There's a fairly common mechanism, which is to say, hey, you have the option of either taking one of these cards, or you can take a random card for the deck if none of those work. Usually you'll find something that works in the pool. Scoring markers, what do you use? I think you use an emissary for a scoring marker. Whoever goes first, and as usual I'm going to go counterclockwise just because I'm weird, so green's going to go first there, gets the Emperor marker. That's just to indicate he's the first player. I may move it around, it doesn't really matter. I'm looking to see where that little score, what is used as a scoring marker. I think it's an emissary. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that doesn't tell me. Yeah. Yep, everybody puts an emissary on the 0 space. And as you collect points, you'll be scoring them along the track, as with many Euro games. Alright. So, on your turn, what are you allowed to do? Well, you're essentially allowed to either play up to all of your cards from your hand, or exchange one of your cards for one of these guys, or a random draw. If you want to play a piece on the board, you're limited to playing no more than 3 cards to generate 2-piece plays in no more than 1 region. This is the 3-2-1 rule. You can only place your pieces in a single region. You can only put 1 piece in a region that you don't have any pieces in yet, and you can place 2 pieces in a region that that already has a piece of someone else's color. Okay, so if you're playing a house, the only rule there is you have to play it in a house space. If there's no more house spaces on the board in that region, you can't play anymore there. If you're playing an emissary, it goes into the dragon in that region. The house majority within a region determines the maximum number of emissaries, which is to say whoever has the most houses, that is the number of emissaries that can be in that region. So in this case, there can be no more than 1 emissary. That doesn't change by purple putting a piece in there, but if purple had 2 pieces in there, there could be a total of 2 emissaries in that region now. Okay? And let's say it was filled out so that purple had 4 pieces in that region, there could be a total of 4 emissaries in that region, and for whatever reason we'll do this. So there's a bit of nuance in terms of, you know, what you're going to develop where. The emissaries usually come in later in play, at least in the 2-player game I played, that seemed pretty clear. Now it says here, a player may place emissaries into a region even if he himself hasn't placed any houses in the region. I think I just read something that someone was complaining because their parents were saying it was the opposite of that. And oh boy, they were wrong. No, I'm sorry. The rules say you can place emissaries if you don't if you don't have houses in the region. It's limited to the 1 player who's there. Now, if, let's just say this is the situation. If we're in this kind of situation, let's allow an additional emissary, and blue wants to play a piece and they want to play an emissary, they can do that, but they can only play 1. They can't play 2 in there, even though 3 would be under the 3-point limit that's allowed, because this is their first piece in the region. Okay, so there's a little bit of trickiness to that. Okay, so once a region's houses have all been taken, we do house scoring at that immediate point. And the way house scoring is going to be done is the person with the most houses in that region gets 1 point for every house that's in that region. So let's say we have this kind of situation. Well, purple would get 5 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 houses in the region. The person with the second most houses, in this case that would be a tie between yellow and green, would get the number of houses the guy with the most has. In this case, 3. So having the most in a region is nice because you get the most points, but it's even better if it's a closely fought situation, right? So if we were looking at something like this, purple would still get 5 points, but second place would only be worth 2. Again, a lot of kind of interesting fighting going on in there, and it gets really interesting and really nasty in 2 players with what you can do there. I'm not so sure how much. It may be a little bit too complex when you start hitting above 2 players for my little brain to handle very easily in terms of being able to capture that and just understand intuitively what I want to play where. And likewise, the third most houses gets the number of houses that the person with the second most has. That goes all the way down to the person with the 5th most houses. If you have no houses in the region, you get no points, though. Tied players are going to be getting a number of points that's equal. So in this situation, purple would get all 5 and everybody else would get 2. If we were, I don't know. Let's go somewhere with more. Yeah, that's not a great choice. Let's go somewhere with more houses. We'll give blue, green, And we'll give purple another one. Okay. So if we were to score this for houses, purple would get the full amount. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points. The second place players, which are blue and green, would each get 3, the amount of houses purple gets. The third place player would get the amount that the second place players each have. So they would get 2 points in that case. Okay? There's no skipping places, and it really doesn't matter because you're getting what the place above you had. At the end of your plays, and any house scoring that happens, you draw cards and you refill your hand. If the pile's been exhausted, you reshuffle it. If there's any cards face up in just being played at that point, no, not just being played at that point, face up over here, they don't get reshuffled. They stay face up over here and are still available. And they don't get shuffled back in the deck. When the draw pile is reshuffled the second time, or when it runs out the second time and needs to be reshuffled, the game ends immediately. If you don't want to play a piece, you're allowed to exchange a card, and you can exchange it either from a face-up or from the draw pile. The game ends when the draw pile has been exhausted the second time, but not immediately. The current round is going to be played out. And then the round ends with the turn of the player to the right of the start player, so everybody gets the same amount of actions. The game will also end if nobody can play any more pieces. At that point, you go through a final scoring period. And for the final scoring, houses are scored. As houses are scored, you'll be throwing one of these little discs down to indicate, hey, this region's been scored. You don't have to worry about it if you notice it's full again. Okay, so if any regions haven't had their houses scored during the normal play of the game, they get scored at this point. There will be some house spaces still available on those. Well, that means less points for the first player, for the person who gets the first position there. Then you're going to score alliances, and this is a little tricky. This is to score alliances between emissaries and neighboring regions. There are going to be 15 possible alliances, and those are going to be scored 1, 2, 3, and these are not in any kind of reasonable order. They jump around a bit, and etc. Okay. The alliance is scored if a player has the most emissaries in both of the regions for that scoring. So for example, if we're on 1, you have to have the majority of emissaries in these 2 regions, in each of those regions, in order to score. He gets 1 point for each emissary in both of those regions, regardless of the color. So having the majority in a region that a lot of people have played into is worth a lot of points. Whereas if you just happen to have an emissary alone here, that's only going to be worth 2 points. So the player's play kind of defines where the value is going to occur in terms of emissaries. But remember, emissaries can't even go on the board unless there are houses there. And you're limited to a number of emissaries in a region. Everybody's limited in total to a number of emissaries in a region equal to the person who's in the lead in the houses in that region. So there's a lot of little interaction going on there in this. Okay. Finally, after all the emissaries are scored, then players score strings of houses. A string of houses has to be at least 4 houses long to be worth any points. And in that case, every house is counted once. No house can be counted more than once in this period, in this particular scoring element. There's a little bit of an ambiguity there. Let me show you this briefly. Okay. So this is real simple. It's worth 4 points, right? I can draw one line. It's not worth 4 points. It's worth 5 points now. This house wouldn't count. But what would happen in a case like this. I think I can only count one of these lines for 4 points. I can't count this line for 4 and this line for 3, even though it counts in terms of those. That's just kind of a clarification issue. I'm not going to look online to make sure that I'm right there. That's what it feels like. Now, it would be fine if I went out to here, and then I'd have 2 4-point rows that I can count completely separate from one another. Okay, the optional rule to the game is these little fortifications. Fortifications are played like you would play a piece of in a region. Okay, they cost you a card of that region. They're part of your play for that region, so you're only allowed to play no more than 2 pieces and spend no more than 3 cards. Hey, I didn't explain why you might have to spend 3 cards. I'll get to that in a moment. Okay, so the advantage of a fortification, you want to build a house at the same time that you build it. That's the first issue. Because if you don't build a house, if you just throw a fortification down, someone else can build their house on your fortification and they will get the advantage of it. These are uncolored, they're neutral, they're just a value add to that space. So you want to make sure you build your house at the same time you build that fortification, which means you have to play at least 2 cards of that color. What it does to you is during house scoring, if you have a house with a fortification in a region, you'll get double the value that you would normally get. And during road scoring, if a house with a fortification is counted as part of your line of road, you would get double points for that entire line of road. So it's a nice little bonus. I don't know how much it really adds to the game. I haven't played with it before. Okay, so why would you be able to play 3 cards? Because, for example, if I played 2 of these, Lu and Zhao, I could drop 2 pieces into Zhao or 2 pieces into Lu. I could not do 1 in each, okay? Why would I want to be able to play 3 cards? Well, the reason to play 3 cards would be, for example, if I had this kind of hand. I'm allowed to play Chu, a purple, in the purple region, but I'm also allowed to play 2 cards as a wild card. Okay, as long as they're matching cards. So if I already have 2 cards of one color, I can play them and turn them into any other color. And that's why I'm allowed to play 3 cards maximum for 2 pieces in one region. Alright, well, that's the quick rules overview, or the not so quick rules overview. I'm sure there are better ones out there. Certainly more professional. I don't like professional. Yeah. And now, well, I'll jump in and start my playthrough, and then eventually come back for a review after I've played it. Granted, I've only played this once before, but whatever.